All right, so I had this question. How is it the case that 1/3 plus 1/3 plus 1/3 equals 1? Because if you look at what the parts of it are, right? You've got 0.3 repeating plus 0.3 repeating plus 0.3 repeating, which really should equal 0.9 repeating. So you'd have 0 with an infinite string of 9s at the end of it. But for some reason, that's not the case, and so we end up with 1. But the only way that we could end up with 1 at the end of that is if we add this term here, this 0.0 repeating. It's repeating forever, 0.0 repeating forever 1 at the end. And this term is absolutely necessary, but it's also really weird in order to get the 0.9 repeating forever, which is all the thirds, each third combined, to equal 1. And so what this is it's each of the parts added together. But it isn't a full whole. It's just all of the parts without being recombined into a whole. So there's some kind of a way of combining the three. This is just simply summing the parts, and the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. It's literally greater than the sum of its parts. And I think this is really strange and kind of cool that even in mathematics, it is literally the case that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. And this term is very interesting to me. If you notice that the 0 is repeating forever, that's necessary in order to give room for all these. And I like to think of them as vertical. So you've got a vertical infinity of 9s here, taking this place, right? This 0 is just giving the 9s their place to proliferate throughout infinity. And then just adjacent to that is the number 1. And this adds the 1 at the end of the 9 that turns it into a 10, that turns it into something that actually encapsulates the full whole. And so if you visualize that, you could have a disk that's, let's say, cut into thirds. Well, if you then add all of those together, then you'll get all these little internal points here. You'll say all those are shaded in, and that will then be equivalent to 0.9 repeating forever. All these points internal. But in order to make it equal one whole, then you'd have to have this second ring around here that's immediately adjacent to the last points inside the disk. This last string, which is internal, is immediately adjacent to the external periphery. And this external periphery added on to the 0.9 repeating forever gives us 1. But only if we have this secondary adjacent periphery around the internal parts. Because if we don't contain the parts into a whole, then we just end up with 0.9 repeating forever. So there's this distinction, and it seems to be geometrical as well as arithmetical. It seems to be geometrical as well as numerical, that you've got a necessary adjacent periphery to the sum of all the parts. You can sum all the parts, but they'll only create this interior inside the unit. It won't actually be a full unit. It'll just be a series of parts. It's kind of like this part and this part and this part if they were just all strewn about in different areas, or a bunch of puzzle pieces. But in order to get this book, let's say, and turn it into one whole unit, I have to have the cover. That's part of the book. It's not a page because it doesn't have anything written on it. It's not a page in the book, but it's a part of the book. And without that, I don't have a book. I just have a series of pages. And And then it's the same with the spiral that keeps all of the pages together. That could be like a representation of the center of it. And the covers would then be the periphery and the pages would be the volume. If you don't want to use a disc, you could use a book analogy, a book with an infinite number of pages in it. Well, without the covers, it isn't a book. Without the binding, it isn't a book. There has to be something that contains and composes all of those parts, and that thing that contains and or composes all the parts can't itself be nothing, because, or one of the parts, because it's containing it, and nothing can't contain anything except nothing. So it can't be zero. It can't be just adding a zero isn't going to give you any additional value, so you can never jump from 0.9 repeating to 1 without adding that 0.0 repeating forever 1 at the end. You have to add that in order to get the 3/3 to combine into a whole which is greater than the sum of its parts.